All right. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another Business Strategy Roundtable. Today I have Dan Sitton from Guardian Technology Group. Dan is a good friend of mine and somebody who I think has incredible integrity as it relates to life and business. And he has recently, I guess for about a year now, Dan, this is Schmer to everybody. About a year now, Dan, you've been running your own MSP and making things happen. And I'm excited to get some expertise from him and learn about what the entrepreneurial journey looks like from your perspective and somebody in the IT services industry. So let me get this cat situated in a way where she's going to be stable for a while. Hey, Dan, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Doing good. It's good to talk with you, Zach.
It's good to have you on. Before we went live, we were chatting about breakfast foods, and I was noting how I think the English muffin stands slightly above some of the other breakfast breads. What's your favorite breakfast bread, and what's your favorite breakfast?
I eat the same breakfast just about every morning. It's usually 5 eggs and some
A lot of eggs.
Yeah, we go through a lot of eggs at this house.
So 5 eggs and oatmeal. Do you put anything on the eggs?
No.
Nothing.
I mean, salt and pepper.
How do you cook them?
Over easy.
All right.
And scrambled. If I'm doing scrambled, then I'll mix a bunch of stuff in there just to break it up a little bit. My favorite breakfast bread is my mom passed away in 2012, and she used to make us cinnamon toast like every morning along with a bunch of eggs. But she would make cinnamon toast all the time. So that probably is my favorite just because it brings back like happy memories.
Yeah, that's great memories. Did you like the Cinnamon Toast Crunch as a cereal?
We didn't get that when we were kids. No, we got the same thing it was either shredded wheat, Raisin Bran, or Frosted Flakes. That was your only choices.
So you like consistency and nostalgia?
Yes, I do.
Do you have a favorite concert that you've ever been to in your life?
I haven't been to many, man.
Honestly, you don't have one that's you said you haven't been to many?
No.
If you could go to one, what would it be?
It'd probably be that's a good question because I love music and I listen to a lot of music. Probably maybe Lenny Kravitz. I've always wanted to see him.
Okay. I don't know a ton about Lenny, but I've definitely heard of him. If I were to know something, what would I know of him?
He's awesome. He's probably one of the coolest guys on the planet.
Yeah?
Yeah, my first record that I ever bought was Let Love Rule by Lenny Kravitz. And I think I was 10. And I listened to it probably 200 times.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Total or like when you were a kid? Like
when I was a kid. When I first bought it. I mean, it was the only record I had, though, too.
Oh, Okay.
And it was just that one song.
And say the song name again for me.
Let Love Rule.
Well, that's a good song.
Yeah,
Anything
it is.
about love is good in my book.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. I think it's going to be fun for us to talk a little bit about two of our icebreakers, which are two different news stories that relate to your expertise domain. The first is a little bit more about what happened with CrowdStrike and their recent. Is it a breach or an incident, Dan? And what's
Um,
the difference for everybody?
it's a breach. An incident is something that was malicious and did happen. A breach would be more like they got in, but it doesn't absolutely mean that they did anything malicious. They could have been stopped as soon as they got in. Whereas when you're looking at an incident, it's something they did get in and something negative did happen. Um, so this one with CrowdStrike actually had to do with a third party vulnerability that was used against them, which gave them unauthorized access to sensitive data, just like every time. The difference between this one,
Mhm.
okay, so I don't know if you remember, but in 2019, SolarWinds,
Yeah,
which is a huge provider of network monitoring software,
yeah.
they had an attack where the attackers actually got into kind of like what you'd call the source code or whatever, and made it to where they could access all these different companies. And we still don't know the end out what how much damage was caused because of that, but they got hit pretty hard when all of it came out in the wash. They got a lot of fines, got hit pretty hard. I mean, I feel like they should have got hit a little bit harder, but nobody's going to get the justice that we feel like they deserve. CrowdStrike, I mean, you remember it brought down a lot of
How?
companies, and
I'm hearing things like it set companies back and industry back like months, like
well,
3
yeah,
or
you
4
remember the
months.
airlines, all the airlines were down,
Mhm.
or some of the airlines were down. I don't
Yeah.
think like Southwest and Spirit and Frontier were down, but I remember I think Delta.
You don't often get the Spirit shout out for something
No, you
positive.
don't. No, that's usually what I fly. I pay like $20 extra to get a bigger seat, and then I'm good.
Oh, there you
But
go.
the
Smart. That's
but
genius. Actually,
I'm pretty frugal. The
good way to be.
I think Delta and United were both down, and that's a huge deal. And I think it was more than I think it was like a solid 24 hours or something. I can't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
I'm I'm wondering how they're going to get hit based off of just how many places they affected and how much overall money was lost in that 1 to 2 days or three, depending on what company it was, where they couldn't operate at all.
Yeah.
So the bug actually made it to where Windows was inoperable, the operating system.
Hmm.
So it jacked them up. And I mean, this goes back to the importance of like regular security audits, having a strong third party program where you're looking at their vulnerabilities, looking at their their subcontractors. Like the contract language needs to have security pieces put in there that align with your standards. Um,
How come? How come? Spirit and
they weren't using CrowdStrike.
okay, but they were
So
still using Windows.
yes, but it only affected companies that were using that they were CrowdStrike was one of their vendors and they had installed on their
Mm,
machines.
I
But
understand.
CrowdStrike's big. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
right behind Sentinel-1 on
Yeah.
popularity. So
What do you think that does to CrowdStrike as a company and as a brand? Because they're big, like you said. I mean, it's not easy to change vendors, especially for large organizations. And there's switching costs as it relates to teaching a bunch of new employees how to utilize new software and creating new processes and defining relationships with the vendors. What do you think that does to CrowdStrike in the
it
long run?
hurts. It
Yeah,
hurts bad because the security is their bread and butter. And when you get caught with your pants down like that,
and in a
it
big
hurts.
way.
Yeah, and they will come back because it's a great company. But it almost makes me want to go out and buy some CrowdStrike stock. just because it's so low right now.
By the dip, yeah. Like whenever Boeing has a plane blow up, you're like, oh,
it's
let
so
me go
low
ahead
right
over
now.
here.
But you know that they're going to come back because they're such a huge company. So yeah, and then too, I mean, to me, this outlines like how important it is to focus on your incident response strategies, like doing tabletop exercise, going through and reviewing your plan every year. Make sure you've got updated contacts in there so that because when something like this happens, nobody thinks it's code red emergency, and you have to get on it quickly. And you need some kind of document that everybody can reference, and it one source of truth of how things are going to go down and how you're going to react to certain things. And then like the lawyers that you got to call, the freaking cybersecurity insurance, who's going to be the point of contact or the mediator or the project manager for the entire incident to work with these individual lawyers. You got to have your like you need to have media statements. So for when you're going to go out and talk to the public, what are you going to say? How are you going to treat the ones that were affected by your attack? I mean, there's just a ton to incident response that you've got to take care of. There needs to be a solid plan in place.
Let me ask you another question. You talked about repercussions as it relates to CrowdStrike and what we may see come, and how SolarWinds had repercussions, but potentially they weren't as severe as maybe they should have been.
They were
Um,
pretty severe.
they were, I don't know enough. It was before my focus in the tech space, and there's so much to learn. Um,
You're doing a great job, though.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I love leaning in. Um, I like to think about cyber incidents um, as fire incidents, because we spend a lot of time talking about insurance as it relates to cyber incidents, and how cyber incidents are starting to become and have become extremely commonplace. And like fires and weathers and other weather incidents and other disasters, in some circumstances, especially for small and medium businesses, and then larger organizations that fall victim to somebody else's failure from a cyber perspective, it can be out of the control of an organization. Um, how do we, as a society, or as an industry, define the right way to approach um, those types of repercussions when it's becoming something that is tough to
So,
control? There's like war games related to it. It's tough. You can't have no cyber incidents. So what should expectations be? And then you talked about repercussions. What do you think from that perspective as well?
so that's a good question because that gets talked about a lot. And I just talked to a client about this. So along with MSP, I also do a lot of security consulting, a lot of compliance and governance and risk consulting,
Shout out GRC.
VCISO, VCIO, yeah, things like that, and then some MSSP stuff. But the main thing, like I was telling a client yesterday, is it's not about if you're going to get hacked. It's about when you're going to get hacked and what are you going to do. So you want to focus on defense in depth. You want to create that each one of those layers uh, to your corporation that to lower the risk or likelihood of attack. But at the same time, you have to spend as much attention and as much action on recoverability and response. I mean, so when the attack happens, you need a solid plan in place, and then you need a solid way to recover as quickly as possible so that you can get back in business and keep making money. So, and repercussions, I have no idea, man. I don't know how this is going to play. It'll probably be 2027 before we actually find that out, but it seems like it's going to be harsh based off the amount of people that lost money and wanting
Well,
some back.
when a fire happens though, and people lose money, do they, like, let's say a restaurant has a fire happen and it damages the restaurant next door. Do regulators then come and administer fines on the business that had a fire? How does that work?
No, but I mean, let's take it. So let's take the restaurant and the fire example.
Please.
It's different whenever a restaurant has faulty wiring and it connects to the frying oil and creates a spark, burns it down. When instead it's an arsonist that comes in and the let's say the arsonist comes in, burns everything down. The company didn't have like locks on the doors.
Or
Didn't have security
fire
cameras.
resistant
Didn't have
walls in there.
anything, any kind of thing.
The
All the
sprinklers were
code that
off.
they're supposed to have, which in cybersecurity would be industry best practices like NIST and CIS, things like that.
Right.
The difference is like it could be just an accident on a fire, but at the same time, it could be negligence and it's an arsonist that comes in where you've got malicious actors that are coming in taking advantage of some vulnerability that was never remediated. You see my dog back here.
We love the animals, man.
Yeah, so there is some repercussions, and I mean, if it was a arsonist, he would be charged, and
that's a good point,
and probably go to jail. Same as if it was easier to catch these malicious actors or hackers.
Yeah,
they would be charged and go to jail.
And when you're a landlord, if you don't have the proper structures in your building and a bunch of people get hurt because of it, there's typically charges related to that. So I guess that is a decent juxtaposition. Well, thank you for talking us through that. We've made it through our icebreaker time, and I want to start learning more about you and your entrepreneurial journey. So we're going to swap into an interview if you're ready.
I'm ready, man. I enjoy talking with you, Zach, so it's all good with me.
Cool. I enjoy talking with you too. Tell everybody about how you came to decide that starting an MSP was right for you, and give us, backstory of your career. So how did it all start for you? And I'll ask you questions as we go.
Okay. So the well, I went to the Marine Corps when I was 22. And I ended up taking the ASVAB, and then I ended up taking like 6 more tests because I did okay on the ASVAB.
What's that one? Forgive me.
The ASVAB, it's like it's the test to get into the military. And based off of how you score on that test, it gives you options for what military occupation you can have.
Okay.
So
interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah, but for some occupations, you have to take a multitude of other tests, and it keeps whittling down which options you have until you
aces in their places.
Yeah. So there was a new one called small computer systems something specialist, and it ended up getting changed to tactical network specialist by the time I got out. But I got approved for that. I had no idea what it was. I have never worked with computers before in my life.
Really?
And I went through boot camp.
Did you feel like it when you got those results on the test? Did you feel like there must be something wrong if you'd never worked with computers before in your life?
Well, they aren't like tests like that. They're mainly in just intelligence tests, where you've got like a whole list of patterns. Yeah, it's a bunch of patterns or numbers, and what do you do, or scenarios, and they give you like a multiple choice to do it. But yeah, it was long. I mean, every test was like 2 or 3 hours. But I didn't know what it was, so I didn't ask any questions because I was like, I don't think they actually told me till after boot camp what I got approved for, or what they stuck me in. But yeah, the first class in beautiful 29 Palms, California, I could not find the power button. Somebody had scratched off the little down symbol and the happy face or smiley face, and I unplugged it. I was pushing the CD-ROM drive, pushing every button I could. I couldn't get it to turn on. And I got thrown out of class the first day and had to do like 2 hours of push-ups until lunch. So that was a good start to it.
How many minutes of push-ups do you get through before you're not really able to do push-ups anymore?
Oh man, after 13 weeks of boot camp, I was like a squad leader. So anytime anybody in the platoon got in trouble, I had to go up there with them and get physical training, where they're like ups and downs, push-ups, jumping jacks, all kinds of stuff until they get tired of telling you to do it. So by that time, I mean, I could probably do push-ups all day long.
Really?
I mean,
How
yeah.
long can you do push-ups now?
Oh,
I think I
a
don't know if I could get through 5 minutes of straight
solid
push-ups.
30 seconds of push-ups. I know.
Okay, we're in a similar spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep going.
Yeah. So I was married at the time with a 2-year-old daughter. So all I did was study after that. And I ended up doing well. And super short story long, I picked my duty station, went to Miramar. I was there for 4 years. And then I went into it. I came back to East Texas from San Diego, started with a bank named Austin Bank. Um,
And at this time, you had lots of skills because you'd been trained.
Yeah, I mean, I had 4 years, so I wouldn't say I was just amazing, but I was
Well,
not bad.
what time? What part? Around what time was this? Like
2003.
2003. So relative to the industry,
Yeah,
because the
I
internet,
focused on network security
yeah,
and cybersecurity,
but
or
because it's a
hardening.
relatively new industry at the time, right? The internet wasn't.
It wasn't too. I mean, yes, sort of, but
When I was in third grade was when computers were normal in school, which was around. It was probably 2003. Actually, it was 2003. So at that time and before then, regular K through 12 schools had just a computer, and it was like
and you could go up
in the
there and
science department. You know what I mean?
here's your turn to get on the computer.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's you may have had 4 years, but that's 4 years where not a lot of people had been out of the starting gate yet. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
my first project as soon as I got there, and I pretty much slept on base for probably 8 weeks, just because there was so. I mean, I was
I
working
remember you
16,
telling me.
20-hour days every day. Was to replace a token ring network, which is an old school way to connect computers with an Ethernet network. So super exciting. But I worked at Austin Bank, then I went to University of Texas, and then I went to a place called Southside Bank for
You were
13 years.
you were doing security at University of Texas.
I was doing security for a state funded project.
Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, it is a state funded project that did. You know how I'm sure they do this in Ohio, but you know how high school you could go in there nowadays for a while now, and you could get like your associate's degree or something because you would beam in video conferencing from the universities or college, and the kids can take a class.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that also goes for prisons, satellite campuses, things like that.
Good.
Different organizations. I monitored those video conference connections that were huge between the microwave towers across Texas and the different institutions that were using it. I like coordinated with them, and then I did the security for any of the state funded like websites that came to us. So I would build the websites, build the forms, and like PHP databases and stuff like that, and MySQL, and then I would go in and like harden up their web security, their web server, harden it up on my side, and then all the switching and routing, the servers that had to do with the video conferencing, I took care of the security on those. So it was a fun job. It was nice
Did you
knowing that.
enjoy working with the university?
I enjoyed working with. Yeah, I didn't work with UT that much, except that they would send out classes. I mainly worked with the high schools, the satellite campuses, the small colleges or junior colleges that were getting those classes. But it was nice knowing you're helping people. So
Yeah, cool. All right,
then I
keep going.
went to a larger bank that was like $3 billion at the time. As a network security engineer because they were replacing all their switches and routers, all their servers, and replacing all their machines. And they asked if I could help on that project. And then I stayed there for 12 years. I worked my way up from network security engineer to CISO and CIO.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I went to another small bank for about 2 years. And my wife was about to retire from teaching after 30 years. And I've always wanted to run my own business, and I kind of wanted a new challenge. So I decided to start an MSP.
Well, and then boom, now we're here. We're here to
Yeah,
this
and
section.
boom, they went to 4-day weeks, and she decided not to retire.
Well, that's good, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
How does that weigh into the decision?
It didn't. I was just thinking, man, if I could do this and work anywhere, and I've always wanted to do it and wanted a new kind of challenge or new adventure, and it's been fun. I enjoy it. I like it. Owning my own business.
Let me ask you this: as somebody who is an entrepreneur themselves, the feeling of I can do this a better way, or I could do this my way, or I want to be driving the ship. Right? There's a couple of different ways you could see it. What was it for you of those that stuck out the most that made you ultimately take the step?
Well, I always had in mind that I would be doing BCIO, BCISO, security consulting, those as well. Honestly, I started the MSP to start building monthly recurring revenue with the intention of building out the security consulting and auditing firm in the future.
Yeah.
But I needed a way to start. I thought about MSPs because I at the $8 billion bank I was at when I left.
How many was it, a B or an M? Was it
Bank? It's a bank.
No, you said it was an 8 million or 8 billion?
A billion.
That's a lot of zeros.
We were at 2.5 billion and we moved up to 8 billion or 7 billion by the time I left. Which I'm not saying I had anything to do with that. I'm just saying that's.
Oh, you were keeping it from rolling out the back end for sure.
I had the best team in Texas. I felt like I had recruited. I spent like 3 years recruiting this network engineer from Xerox. I took another guy from a huge phone company that was awesome at VoIP. I had about 45 people, and man, I spent a lot of time recruiting and training them. We spent about $60,000 a year training. That was a huge part of it. That's a huge part of retaining good people too.
I love that.
And
Talk more about retention.
Well, I mean,
what is retention, Dan? Man, you're getting into spaces I like to talk about now. Tell people what the hell that is.
So when I was there, one of the big things that IT guys don't have, because it's relatively new, is career paths. Solid, logical career paths that they could follow, so that as soon as the position opened up, they would be ready or have all the requirements to step into that and apply for it and look favorable. So one of the first things I did once I became director of IT was to fill out those career paths for each and every one of them, and have my other directors or managers go through, and we spent probably a year building out those career paths so that people enjoyed it. They loved being able to say, hey, I'm at level 1. Here's how I get to level 2. Here's how I get to level 3.
I would love to touch on that. So in the Domino's world, I spent time supporting an operating model concept that was focused on giving knowledge and empowerment to people in each of their different positions so they could intrinsically choose to do a good job or not. And what I hear you describing is giving a very clear roadmap to people on how they can get from where they are to where they want to go, which is one level of success to another level of success. Is that fair to say, do you think?
Yes.
And you said that people were extremely motivated by that. Talk more about that.
Well, here's the other thing that you've got to be okay with, and you still have to treat these people or this certain type of employee or team member. You've got to treat them just like your superstars because you need them. So yes, there was those ones that are striving to be superstars or very goal oriented, and they would jump on it. And I would usually say, hey, you can go to a conference every year and you can get a certification, and I'll pay for that training and the certification if you pass. And then I had a list of certifications that I would go through with their performance review and their one-on-ones. We'd talk about them and say, hey, which one are you working on, so on and so forth. But back to my original statement, there's some of those guys that, man, they're just the broom pushers, or they want to live on help desk for the next 10 years. Yeah. Or they just want to be a level 1 or level 2.
They want to come to work and they want to go home.
Yeah. And they want to do a good job. I mean, they want to be very good at what they do, but they do not want to have to stay 20 hours at night. They don't want to work a 20-hour day. And you've got to have those people. And having quality people at that level 1 and level 2 position, it's a game changer. Now, I would often hire people that maybe they didn't have any cybersecurity experience or IT experience, but they had a solid team persona, solid communication, solid soft skills, and was motivated to be good at whatever they want to do and motivated to learn. If they fit those requirements, I would hire them. And then I would teach them anything they needed to be good at IT or whatever they were doing.
But tell me, keep going. Don't let me cut you off. I was gonna direct you back to retention. What is retention? And you showed me some ways where you created it, but what actually is retention? Because I think there are lots of people that are working on the transition, and this is a common business thing. There are doers and lots of solo entrepreneurs or folks that are a part of smaller operations, either have contractors that they trust or have people that they can kind of micromanage. When you're talking about building a team of 45 people, you're seriously scaling. And you have to be able to retain enough people to be able to build a team. So some people are working on that transition, and I hear all the time, I can't find good help. People don't want to work. It's really hard to hire. Nobody shows up to the interviews. And whenever I hear those types of things, I always think there are people that want to work, and you have a problem within your own operation as it relates to your hiring. Retention is one of them, because if you can't keep people in your business, you can't, you're always hiring, right? So I guess, could you give like a definition of retention, even though I've kind of hit it from a couple of different angles already? And then you told us how you do it, but why is retention important in your world as you've built teams?
Well, and this is going back to my bank days. So yeah. I'm pretty much subcontracting anything I need right now, since I've only
for the moment, because you're at the beginning. For the moment,
I'm not planning on staying small for very long. Right. The retention is important because, well, I mean, one, you're looking at cost. It costs a lot of money to retrain somebody. Every environment is different, so they've got to relearn that. They've got to relearn your processes, your policies, your standard operating procedures, those kinds of things. And then two, like I said, if they have that teamwork persona and they have a personality where they want to see others do well and the company do well, that's invaluable. I mean, you can't buy that.
Yeah. I think so you have to keep it when you get it.
Yeah, and you have to hold on to it. Right. Like with MSPs, I was just talking to a guy the other day, and he was saying the same thing. I said, man, I'm telling you, if you would treat your guys the same way or in a manner that you try to retain your clients, it would make a huge difference. It would be a game changer for you, and you would see a whole nother level. I'm telling you, you would move to that level that you're trying to get to if you would. I mean, just give 50% of what you're doing right now for your clients. And I'm not saying that you need to do the same thing as what you're doing for your clients, but put that kind of focus, care on your team, and see what happens. Training is a huge deal. It's always a big go-to for IT guys, security guys, because those guys, they get into IT and security because they want to fix things. They want to find solutions to problems, and giving them that training makes them feel more valuable. They're more valuable to you. And then it gives them more tools to fix those problems and put in solutions that they love. I mean, they're like detectives.
And they're grateful to you for helping them become more. stronger, more
And
capable.
I never made certifications or training a requirement. I would just say, hey, this is going to look a lot better on you if you do this. And I know that there's all those paper certifications out there, but I've gotten a lot of certifications over the year, and I always learn something that makes me more efficient or effective in that area. So
Absolutely.
yeah, retention is super important. I mean, just if you look at cost, but then you look at also the how it affects your team. Now, there's the other side of it too. Um, I never put in I never had a personality or a attitude that I wanted to hold anybody back. So if someone, I had a very open door policy, and a lot of people didn't agree with me on this or thought it was dumb, but I had a very open door policy about if they found an opportunity that would make their life or their family's life better, or it was more in line with where their they wanted their career to go. I always tell them, listen, I know this sounds like a trap, but you can come talk to me. We can look at the opportunity together. I'll give you an honest opinion on what I think. But if you find something better and you have to leave this team, I will miss you so much. But my whole goal is to build you up and then give you every opportunity to succeed and your
Right.
family to succeed. So if you find something better, then man, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader. So
Right.
if you're not for sure, I've got a lot more experience in these areas, and I'm more than happy to walk through that with you. And I'll tell you, I'll write a recommendation for you, a character recommendation letter if you want. It doesn't matter to me, but that would usually cause people to want to stay with me regardless. And
Yeah.
I even had people that would turn down something better, and I would argue against it because they wanted to stay with our
They
team.
might have been turning down more money, but they weren't turning down something better. And I'll tell you the reason that's true. Well, there's two reasons it's true.
This is exactly what they said every time I told them that.
Well, and I know it's true because I've seen it. I've seen it in microcosms of different stores, and I've seen it in macrocosms of being a part of larger teams. And I've seen it as macrocosms of becoming a part of different, I've lived in 10 states. When you become a part of a community, you meet a lot of different types of people that have a lot of different personality traits and a lot of different interests and a lot of different goals. And when you find somebody that has authentic empathy and care for others, like what you're expressing about yourself, I want to see you go do well for you. It's so rare, man. So many people want to see you do well for them. And and that's the money thing. It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna make a lot of money with me. You're gonna make a lot of money. And
Mhm.
that's like, yeah, but other things in life matter. And what does that look like? And the people that know I'm at a place where my boss, Dan, I trust him and he trusts me. That is so much more important than the difference of a few $100s on a paycheck every 2 weeks, because you can't buy trust
No, you can't.
at
But
all.
you've got to pay people though too.
You got to be able to pay people though too.
But
Absolutely.
and I specifically preached team. Take care of your team. Make sure that if somebody's working, you're working too. Let's help everybody get to the same level. And so we built an environment where they wanted to come to work. It was like coming to work with your baseball team or something like that.
Right.
And they enjoyed like being there. It wasn't like, man, I'm sure. I mean, there were some that did not want to be there, but
Well, and you
for the
have bad
most part,
days and good days,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And for the most
That's
part,
life.
everybody enjoyed being there and enjoyed working together.
Very cool. Well, we got a good look into who you are as a person and what matters to you in terms of business and team building. You are at a larger bank with 45 people, and then you wanted to do your own thing. So you went from, I mean, obviously, people managing a team, and having growing something is important to you because you've done that your whole life with yourself and in work. So now you're in your own or your own Guardian Technology group, which is MSP service as well as VCIO and consulting. Forgive me for butchering that the first
No, no, it's great.
time. What was the thing that made you jump from having this team that you created full of people that were excited to work for you and to be supported by you, and then boom, you're in your own canoe, excited to go up the river. And I mean, I believe in your mission and it's an exciting thing, but I think the entrepreneurial journey for folks, like making that decision, it's not an easy thing to do, and it requires confidence and assuredness in self. And I would love to hear you talk about that.
Well, and my wife I had a solid, I mean, I made really great money at that bank. I had a solid career that I'd built over 20 years. Um, my wife thought I was a little bit crazy for doing it, but she fully, I mean, 1,000% supports me. So we didn't have any problems with that. But man, honestly, my last kid got out of the house, and I wanted a new challenge. I wanted like a new adventure. I like adventures. We go out and explore and go hiking all over the nation. I mean, we like doing things like that. I had done everything there was. I went all the way from help desk all the way up to CIO, CISO. There was nowhere to go. Um,
Hmm.
and so honestly, and I know it's not a good excuse. I know there should be something better, but I honestly just wanted the new challenge, and I wanted a new something to conquer.
I want to interrupt you. I don't think I push back against your suggestion that that's not a good reason. And the reason that I do is because I believe in lifelong learning. And what you're
Yes.
describing is I had reached a plateau where I was no longer learning. I was no longer growing, and and you wanted that. And I think that is a really, I think not only is it not a bad reason, I think it might be one of the best reasons uh, for doing anything, is that you're genuinely interested in growing, and doing more. And I applaud you for that. Tell us a little bit about the journey so far. So we're talking about building an MSP or building a cybersecurity consulting business from scratch. What does it look like so far? You don't have the 45-person team. You don't have the sales guys. You don't have the marketing guys. There's nobody's making coffee other than you and your wife. What's up, man? What's it like?
Let me say something else about learning
Yeah,
that you hit
please.
on. I've been asked a lot about what are some of the keys to my success over the years. Um, and I've always had a rule where I spend like 30 minutes to an hour every day as much as possible. I mean, there's going to be days that you're not going to hit it, just like working out or anything else. There's going to be days, but you
Eating
should
ice
always
cream
be
in the middle of the night.
striving towards that goal. Yeah. Uh, and having that mindset of learning something every single day, it, it made a huge difference in my life. I mean, I grew up logging, baling hay, working at a lumber yard
Yeah.
for like $8 or $6 an hour.
Mm.
There was nowhere for me to go, and this career has helped out tremendously. But I'll get back to what it was like. So it was pretty intimidating, and I have to say one of the things I've learned is there's there's a lot of wolves out there. I'm a very trusting, uh, positive, optimistic guy when it comes to people's character. I'm not someone that automatically is suspicious of someone's motives, which is a blessing and a curse. Um,
Yeah.
but I have met a lot of wolves. But on the high side, I have met 10 times great people that have in with MSP owners and their teams that are super open and honest, are not focused on competition, but more like co-opetition. And that's been very refreshing and exciting. And I try to push that. I try to pay that forward as much as I can. Um, that was one of the biggest things. The other one is how little and how big the kingdom of marketing and selling are. I've taught classes on strategic leadership and strategic planning and things like that, but marketing and selling and prospecting, it's just, it's a whole nother kingdom.
Domain of knowledge.
Yeah, domain of knowledge on its own. And I've read probably 8 sales books. I don't know how many marketing books this year. That's one of the things that I'm actively focusing on learning right now. The other thing is having to learn the finance side of it. I've always had to keep a budget, but it was focused specifically on the IT budget, not the business budget. So learning all that, all the different domains of knowledges that I've had to tap into, and once again, I said there are wolves, but there's been a ton of great people that I've reached out to and said, hey man, what do you think about this? I'm not asking how you do it. Let me tell you how I'm doing it, and then you tell me from your experience and wisdom, what's the way I could be doing it better. Also, I'm not the guy that will not reach out because of pride or something like that. I want results. I want to get the mission accomplished. So me telling people I'm stupid, I don't have a problem with it. I want results. So, and I used to hire people that were subject matter experts. And if they told me that's what we need to do, I didn't argue with them. I said, well, that's what we need to do. And if the CEO argued with me about it, I just say, well, that's what we're doing. We hired a guy and we're paying him $150K a year. This is his specific area. So, I mean, if you feel like you know more, and I know I don't know more, then we need to do
Right.
it. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
What's been the biggest challenge? And if somebody's watching and they're like, "Oh, I think I'm about to start an MSP," like, what do they need to do first? I think I'm about to, like, and they're like about to go out the airplane, and you get to tell them one thing.
Man, honestly, one of the things that's kind of like my saving, because I didn't know anything about running an MSP. I knew something about running an independent IT department and a security department for an enterprise, but that's nowhere near the level of challenge it is for running it for multiple corporations or businesses or I mean, they're
businesses
all different.
with networks of.
Then you've got all the legal forms that I didn't know anything about. One of the biggest things beginning to me, and they're not giving me $5 to say this or anything, was joining Tech Tribe.
He does say that. He says that privately off camera also.
Yeah, that was a huge leg up for me because they had all these different legal forms that were available. They had the marketing material that you got every month. You've got this whole community of people that want to help that you can ask questions to. So that was very helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing is so I started last August. I think from August to December, I made negative $1,300. So the other thing is, if you can have some money put back up so that you can, because you got to pay the bills, you got to pay your house, you got to pay your car notes, you got to get your utilities. Your wife's still going to want to go to the grocery store every day and get gas and things like that. So being prepared a little bit, but at the same time, I wasn't prepared at all. I just made the leap. So if it comes down to it, I wish I would have started this journey 15 years ago, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. If I could go back, I definitely would have started my own business back then because it's a blast.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything that you're building is something that you care about as an entrepreneur and something that is for you and what you care about. So if your mission is to help, banks have optimal security and IT services to allow them to focus on what they're good at, and you care deeply about that like you do, then when you're building your business, it's like, oh, awesome. Like, there's a little brick here, there's a brick here. And it takes some of let me say it differently. It adds joy to the work as opposed to the work being work. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. We just got a question about, as a new IT service company, MSP, I've consistently struggled most with client acquisition. Do you have any MSP sales advice, Dan? Now he's asking me, but we've got the
Well, you
true
start, man. You start.
guru here. But I'll start, and then Zach, if you would finish it up, because I mean you are the king when it comes to client acquisition.
So every time thanks for saying that, man. But every time Dan and I talk about this, I say that he has the skills that you would teach somebody who is a high level sales executive, because he has all of the personal stuff to win in the conversation. And I look forward to you realizing that and having the confidence, because all the empathy, that's the sales, that's the sales stuff. You already got it.
So,
Anyway, answer
Mr.
his
Pierce,
question.
and also Mr. Paxson, MSPs do not do push-ups, but I need to do a lot more push-ups. Uh, um, so this is what I would say. One, when you start out, so I took the opposite approach. I built out, I was like the first 6 months, I was super worried about my stack. And you don't have to be, you want to get a solid stack, but if you get something in place, then it's going to be fine. And I spent all this time doing logistics. Like if I went to a new bank and I'm rebuilding the entire department, how the processes works, I wrote all my processes, wrote policies, wrote SOPs for whenever I'm going to start onboarding new people, and whenever I'm going to start hiring out, built out this entire framework. I wish I wouldn't have done that. It's important. It's super important. And it needs to be second important to getting out in front of people, getting out there and talking to people, trying to get speaking engagements. I think if you've got a certain niche that you're looking at, find out every conference that they've got. And if you don't know what those conferences are, call somebody that you may know in that niche and say, hey, do you know of any solid conferences that I could be going to where I can talk to people? Because you will be so much better in person than you will with an email. An email is great. Email marketing is solid.
It's a piece of the puzzle, is a
Yes,
better way to say it.
it's one of the pieces, like printed sales, the
Radio ad.
all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff is important. But man, you will shine once you get in front of people. Once you get to actually go talk to them and you tell them how passionate you are and how you're trying to build this new business. And thank you, Katie. That's so nice of you.
It's true. I agree with Katie.
But if you get out there, she is Katie Junes, is one of the best salesmen that I've ever met. I mean, she can turn water into wine anywhere she goes. She's absolute. If I ever get rich enough to where I can hire her, she would probably be one of my first hires. But anyway, back to it. Mr. Pierce, if you can just get out in front of people, that's the most important thing. And I know it's hard to do that whenever you're doing the tech tickets, you're doing all the bookkeeping, you're doing all the little things that run a business, but try to make time to build a sales methodology, a process where you're like, hey, I'm going to call these people today. I'm going to reach out to them and be honest with them. Just like Katie and Zach have shown me, having just an honest conversation with them, letting them know that you're available and that you care about their success, they're going to come back to you. But you've got to keep up that. There has to be repetition there. There has to be where it's not like one call every 6 months. It's like once a month you're calling in and checking on how they're doing, how their family's doing, and things like that. Go to the different summits, the conferences. Go to the MSP conferences that you can get the free tickets for, and talk to other people. There's lots of MSPs out there that have contracts that they want to get rid of. Like the client is too small. They've grown out of that client and they don't want them anymore. They're trying to get rid of them. And once you start making a connection with some of those other MSPs, I mean, they'll throw stuff your way occasionally, or there may be ways that they can help outsource you. Go out there and make friends, man. That's the biggest thing.
I want to add, those are all excellent points, amazing points. And if you're an MSP or a salesperson or a member of a tech-oriented startup that feels uncomfortable with getting in front of people, there may be work to be done on the front side where you really confirm what it is that you're offering. Because if you're uncomfortable to talk about what it is your business does, then that is a sign that you're not comfortable talking about what it is your business does. And you can spend time privately going over your tactical notes, you know what I mean? And thinking to yourself, well, what am I gonna what do I want to get across from the conversation perspective? What do I want them to walk away with? What do I need to know? Which leads into my second point. Um, for me, the most important thing in sales is understanding the needs of who you're selling to. So,
Yes.
sales is the buyer and the seller doing value communication and agreeing on the value exchange. If the buyer doesn't understand the value, they can't agree on it. And if the seller doesn't make the value clear or understand what the buyer thinks is valuable, then they can't properly communicate. A lot of people think of sales as the movie version of sales, where the sales guy's slick and they're trying to convince them. You know what I mean? But that's not actually sales. What's more realistic in sales is actually the Office's uh, portrayal of Michael Scott in the Chili's with the baby back ribs and
Yeah.
Jan.
Yeah. With
Getting to know somebody.
Jan.
Yeah, exactly. With Jan, getting to know somebody, understand what it is that truly matters to them, and then present the value to them in the way that matters to them. And if you're able to take the time, which Dan's talking about, follow up with them for a couple of months, learn who the hell they are and what matters to their business. If you can take the time to understand them, then you can present the proper value to them and they will agree that that value is correct and you won't have to sell. You will have already sold. So I like to think about it in understanding what it is the customer or potential client needs and cares about, and then take a softer approach usually.
Uh, yeah, and Daniel Pierce, if you shoot me a if you want to go over this sometime, shoot me an email or a message on LinkedIn. We'll get together and trade contact information, and I'll help however I can, man. The other thing I would say, one of the biggest challenges now, because you've mentioned it to me quite a bit, and so has Katie, is marketing yourself as well as your company. And you're better than you think you are. I've always been taught to not talk about myself and not
Me
brag or
too.
anything like that. So that's been something that I've struggled with. But I mean, as you can tell from this today, I'm getting better at it. The but you're better than people see you better than what you see yourself. So it's okay to talk about what you've done, what you could accomplish, and how you can get them to where they need to be to build their business and be successful. You have to learn. You have to learn to take the value of what you're doing, security, IT, and show them how that's going to turn into dollars for them because they're going to be more successful. They're going to be able to take their technology. It's just going to work. You're going to be doing all the things that needs to where they can pick it up and run with it each day. You're going to be enable them to make new sales, to make new clients, build their customer base. Those are the kind of things you've got to sell the value, and you need to find out what their pain points are, and then show them how you can create a solution for them.
Don't ask though, what are your pain points?
No, no, just
Listen,
if you build a relationship with them,
they'll tell you.
by that second or third conversation, they will tell you what's bothering them or
I
what's
can't get my
agitating
people
them.
to show up on time. I'm always having these people are always refusing to do this process, or I'm constantly having this third party fail to follow the system. And you'll hear those things and be like, well, we handle, we have systems for handling third party security.
Yes,
We do this and that. And then they'll appreciate that you've heard them. Oh, this person listens. oh, I might be able to work with this person understands me. I might be able to. We might have something here, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Do they
Yeah,
actually
and
care, and are they listening?
try to turn what you're doing into a business value and a cost saver. Like, hey, how often does it take? How costly is it going to be if you have to change vendors? If we vet those vendors and we monitor those vendors as third parties to make sure that they're doing correctly, they're doing what you're paying for, you're going to save more money by not having the turnover for your solutions.
Yeah, that's right. Well, here we are at the end of the hour, Dan. Let's go ahead and have you do an outro for Guardian. Tell people, tell people specifically what you guys do and how they can get a hold of you, and then I'll take us out of here and we'll go do weekend stuff.
So we focus mainly on MSPs and banks and credit unions. For MSPs, we do come in, we'll do like I'll come in, do a security assessment, do a policies and processes, look at best practices, industry best practices, do a gap analysis for you. We'll look at like your SOPs, what policies do you have in place, how are your guys handling things? Yeah.
What's a gap analysis?
It's where I'll go through and I'll take those industry best practices, and I'll see where you're lining up and that you have the evidence to support what you're doing in case your clients need to see that. And then I'm going to make a list of some things that you may need to increase your strength on, and then how you would remediate that, how you would treat it like a project, or what's the ways that you can implement solutions so that you can put that fix in place and build a repeatable process around it. Because putting this fix in place, especially on processes, if you do it once, but it's not a repeatable process that people can easily learn and follow, then I'll be writing it down the next year too. And nobody wants that, especially not me. I want you to be successful. The other thing is compliance, governance, risk assessments, vendor management. I do a lot of that. I work with a lot of companies. I also do security consulting. I've worked on 4 incidents this year. 2 of them were pretty solid ransomware. I go in and I'm the mediator between the cybersecurity insurance, the board of directors, and the IT team and the CIO. So they'll bounce ideas off of me. They'll come tell me, hey, what do you think about this? How should we handle this? Or I'll tell them, hey, that's good that they're asking to do that, but you need to ask them this, this, and this, and you need to be conscious of these situations that can come of that. Or when you roll this out, you want to make sure you do so on and so forth. You get the idea. But I focus a lot on consulting and MSP as well. We take care of different companies on the MSP side, but we also manage the security as well.
And I think Dan is open to interesting partnership opportunities to other
Yeah, I
businesses
sure am.
that might not fall into one of those categories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
Yes.
I'm with TriUnity Strategies. We help businesses, startups, small businesses, IT service providers, and restaurants solve unique problems and scale. Dan, thanks for coming today. It was a
And
lot
thanks
of
for
fun to
inviting
have
me.
you.
It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Happy Friday to everybody. Next week, we have, shame on me, we have Helped. We're going to be talking about owning the customer experience. We have David Son coming on. He is also a very high EQ person, just like Dan.
He's
Um,
awesome.
he's
He's a
really
great
awesome.
guy.
Yes. And what they do, it's going to be an interesting conversation. So if you guys are watching now and you haven't responded to the invite for next week's, it's going to be an awesome conversation. What they do is tremendously unique, extremely valuable for service providers and any organization that has a high level of customer touch. So going to be a great conversation. They do wonderful things. Um, welcome to the weekend, and thank you guys for being here for another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, and Dan, thanks again, man.
Everybody take care. Thank you.